Meeting to order.
Okay, present tonight we have Kathy Moore, Lara Lopez, Lawrence Wright, Tommy Minton, David Pollock, Curtis Gashlin, and absent is Kristen Switland.
Thank you. If everyone would check your cell phones, please make sure they're turned off. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the October 2nd, 2018 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Lopez?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wright. I think you were first. You're on the right.
Make
Yes.
a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public comment. This is the time for anyone wishing to speak to the board about any item on the agenda or any other item. This is not the time for the applicant. You'll have your time in a few minutes. Seeing no public comment, we'll close, or seeing no one to speak, we'll close public comment. Next item is the public meeting item, deviation request 2627 Peony Drive. Are you the applicant?
Yes, we are.
Would you come up to the podium, please? State your name and address for the record.
I'm Brian Keys, 2627 Peony Drive, Oviedo, Florida.
Okay, will you tell us about your project?
Sure. We're trying to build a pool. When we purchased the property, we went to the model home, which had a expansive rear area with a pavers and pool. And the builder, MI, said, we can do this. We can do this over here by the woods in the corner. And so we paid out $30,000 lot premium to purchase that lot and build our home. All the documentation, the site plan, the landscaping plan, up until the survey had a 171-foot full lot line along the north edge. When we got to the survey, it was 123 foot. So we lost about 50 feet in rear improvable space. So what we're looking for is a 3.5-foot deviation in the 7-foot setback so that we can properly build a pool in the rear.
Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Wright?
A couple of questions. When we look at deviations, we look at the justification, the mitigating circumstances, the criteria that's used.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of the explanation I saw in the submittal that you put in, you indicated the survey was put out wrong. I know that obviously there's a discrepancy in the survey. Looking at the thing, it's baffling me how there was a 50-foot difference in what was shown originally versus what's there now.
Yes, sir.
So I honestly haven't seen anything that really gives me any mitigating circumstances at this point. So that's what I'm trying to drill down a little bit more.
Sure.
Because like I said, I'm trying to find reasons here why we should approve any deviation regardless, because there's nothing that's non-conforming on the lot. You have a backyard. The house appears to be one of the larger models that was put on there. You compared it to the neighbor's house where they have more space, but it's a smaller footprint.
Yeah.
So you kind of created by using a larger building, you created a lesser space on there. So the survey issue, like I said, I have a question on that because it looks like the survey is 20.5 feet and the setback's 20. So I'm trying to see where you would have gained a half a foot, maybe a little bit less.
Right, if they placed the footprint of the home. So the thing is, we were told it was 171 foot. I have the site plan, and I'm sure you've seen it already. I'm not going to...
I mean, I've seen the site plan. I didn't see anything that indicated anything different than the exact plat dimension. So
Yeah, so can I approach?
yeah, absolutely.
Just know that
that-
anything you give us is kept for the record.
Is that what this is here that we got?
I've got this right here. So I've got the site plan and the landscaping plan, both of which for our lot 38 indicate 171 foot.
Let's see.
Yes, sir. There's the site plan as well. So what we were told was that there was a Scrivener's error
Yeah.
which basically eliminated 50 feet that we thought we were going to get when we purchased the home with a $30,000 lot premium. And so the hardship is,
Yeah, I mean, I see what they did. They gave you dimensions to the back of the, not the lot dimensions, so.
What I notice is that there's actually two measurements on the sides.
Well, that's what this one you can't tell on the landscape plan.
Yeah, you can on that. There's two actual lot sizes.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's exactly what he said. It's a scrivener's error, so. Curtis, you need to see this? Yes.
so when we looked at the model home, we chose the same elevation, the same model home. The builder said, you're going to have plenty of room to build a pool back here. I've always had this dream of, obviously living in Oviedo, having a 2-story screen, having an enclosure, and this beautiful kind of botanical gardens. And at this point, we're just trying to squeeze a pool in there. I've got 2 kids, one obviously on the way.
No, understood.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm looking for a reason, because right now, until I saw that, I don't really have a reason
Absolutely, yeah.
that it makes sense, why we would approve that. Now, I mean, again, the fact that you, I think, originally asked for 4.7, and so you've reduced that, that's obviously
Ignorance, not realizing the
favorable,
process.
so,
I didn't realize how this process worked. And when I spoke to Anoch and to William and to Karan, they explained to me, educated me on the process, and basically said, you're asking for an awful lot, and that's not going to happen. So I said, well, what's reasonable?
like I said, what we typically look, well, I'm not going to speak for everybody, what typically I look for in these deviations is something that's non-conforming. There's nothing, it's a standard lot, it's buildable, so I'm looking for something, and again, I can be sympathetic in the fact that, the builder provided you something that was beyond your expectations. So, one other question then, regardless of the site plan, because we are moving closer to the rear setback, we're going in farther. Normally the height of the screen cage and the back of the screen cage is 14
feet.
That's the maximum height. That's inclusive of any, knee wall or retaining wall that needs to be built on the pool. I asked staff earlier about that. Can you give me an idea what the height is that you expect at that 3.5-foot dimension? Or 3.5 foot from the property?
We were looking for a rear wall. Are you asking for the rear wall height?
Because there is a great, you indicated, there's a great.
18-inch turn down.
Yeah.
So we're looking at about a 9-foot rear height, a rear wall height, or between a 9 and 10, whatever the maximum is, we're going to go with, based on the dimension. So if it's a 14-foot, I understand that if we're asking for a deviation, we're going to need to lose a couple feet on that. So I was looking at if we can do like around a 10-foot height, that would be amenable. That would work for us.
I mean, again, obviously I prefer not to go 14 feet right up to the property line, but, that's measured from the ground, the knee wall, the retaining wall to the top of the pool cage. So
Yes, sir.
it's not just the cage, it's the wall too. So,
Got it.
Again, I just want to make sure that we're still on the same page and we can work with something like that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question of the applicant? I have one. This plat map that you guys provided to the city, where did that come from?
Which one now?
It's in our packet. It's within the materials, looks like, that you provided.
Is it this one here that has a little drawing around it?
No, it's the one that shows the,
It's the actual
shows more of
recorded
the,
plat. The one
yeah.
that
Okay.
actually shows
The
the
plat.
recorded dimension of the one.
Okay.
Do you want to look at this picture and
Yes, please.
perhaps you can find it in your paperwork then?
Okay, yeah.
That one?
I'll find that one, sure.
Okay. It says Figure 1, the Phase 2 Plaque Map.
It's in here somewhere. Apologies, bear with me. I'll find it. You can reference it if you want to start. I want to hold you back.
Where did you get that plat map?
Brian, I think she's talking about this.
Yeah. Do you know where that one came from? Yeah, it's not in here. I'm not sure.
What's been recorded is a little.
I'm just Asking where do we procure that from is the question. Oh, there it is.
I don't know what it
I
looks
think we
like. I
gave it to
haven't
Adam.
seen it, so I'm not sure which
Here it
one.
is.
Oh, well, that explains it then.
Yep.
Oh, that was on, online, like on one of the
We pulled it
one of
from-
the city websites.
I think from the
I
website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, we started this process a year ago.
The reason I'm asking is because that one has the correct
That's right.
measurements on it.
That's right.
So at what point did you find out that your lot was shorter than you thought?
We found out in the meeting a week and a half ago with Anoch. We obviously signed the plat map or the survey when we took ownership of the property, but the entire process up until that point, we were looking at dimensions of 171 and 153. So at no point did it occur to us this is our first time, this is a rookie mistake. We didn't scrutinize it with as much rigor as we should have. That's the facts. I should have looked very closely before we signed it. But the entire process leading up to it, it was 171 on the north end and 153 feet on the south end of the home. We had no reason to believe they were going to switch it up last minute. We had no reason to believe there was a Scrivener's error. They didn't disclose it to us at any point. And you know, as we're building, we're out there looking at this expanse of land that leads up to the conservation. There was not really a clear indication of where the property line ended throughout that building process. I mean, we feel like pretty much betrayed by the builder, and we're going to see if we have any recourse on that, but it doesn't seem like we do. We signed it, and shame on us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the applicant? You can sit down for now.
Thank you.
Thanks. May we hear from staff?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. This is, as Mr. Keys mentioned, this is a request for the LPA board to approve a rear setback deviation for the Keys property located at 2627 Peony Drive for the construction of a pool deck, and screen enclosure in the rear northwesterly side of the property for a 3.5-foot deviation from the minimum 7-foot minimum requirement, representing a 50% deviation, so that the structure can be located no closer than 3.5 feet from the rear property line. The property owners are Mr. and Mrs. Keys. Per LDC Section 2.7A, the code recognizes individual characteristics of a given development that flexibility should be given to quantifiable standards in the code. Section 2.4D1E gives the board the authority to review and act on building permits that have deviations of greater than 20%. The requested deviation exceeds 20%, so therefore the deviation is subject to the board's approval. As mentioned, the subject property is on 2627 Peony Drive within Phase 2 of the Allens Landing subdivision, which is regulated by the Allens Landing Development Agreement. Phase 2 consists of lots 32 through 48, and the subject property is lot 38. It has a low-density residential future land use designation and an R1BB zoning district. Section 4.15B of the code establishes a minimum 7-foot rear setback from the property line. In the conversation just now, the original application had requested a 2.3-foot setback, representing over 60% deviation. When we submitted our first compliance review comments to the applicant, we told them that staff couldn't support that high of a deviation. We would be comfortable in supporting a 3-foot setback, a 3-foot deviation, having a 4-foot setback. So it's about a 57% deviation. In the course of reviewing, the director reviewing the application, we had another meeting with the applicant on October 8th, where we discovered the error in the site plan in comparison to the recorded plat. At that time, staff was sensitive to the issue and was willing to support a deviation of 50% so they could have a 3-foot rear setback and a 3.5-foot deviation. They pretty much explained their situation. They also provided a narrative to support their request. The narrative is based on the requirements in LDC Section 2.7. In terms of existing special conditions, staff found no special conditions or circumstances that relative to the lot which created or a need for or supported the deviation. The placement of the home complies with the development agreement standards for 20-foot setback for front and rear lot setbacks, building setbacks. The only issue is that the lot dimensions in the site plan did not match the numbers in the site plan didn't match the numbers in the final plat. However, when we measured it with the scale during the October 8th meeting, the actual lot length is the same as it is in the recorded plat. So the number, the error is in the actual numerical numbers shown on the approved plat, which was incorrectly showing the lot as being 33 plus or minus 33 on one side, almost 50 on the other side, deeper than what was on the recorded plat. In terms of compatibility, the site is surrounded on its rear and northerly side by 2 dry retention ponds and by 1 property owner on the western side, southwesterly side. That property owner, I believe, is here and has provided a letter in support of the deviation. In terms of the mitigative techniques evaluation, the applicant has indicated that they would, in the course of doing the pool, they'd have to remove 2 trees. They would relocate one of the trees to the front and save one of the trees. Per the development agreement, a lot of smaller than 7,500 square feet does not require any lot trees per the approved development agreement. So they will be maintaining 2 lot trees, 1 existing magnolia tree and a relocation of one of the large canopy trees from the rear property area. In terms of environmental impacts, the deviation is not anticipated to adversely impact any natural areas, and it's not necessary to conserve any environmentally sensitive areas. In evaluating the minimum deviation granted, the requested 3.5-foot deviation, the 50% deviation to the minimum 7-foot rear setback requirement would be the minimum deviation necessary based on the lot dimensions of the final survey to allow the construction of the pool enclosure as it is designed and under contract. Other special facilities in open space, their deviation would not hinder them maintaining their 25% open space requirement, and they are maintaining 2 trees on the lot where the development agreement does not require any trees. Existing non-conforming uses weren't evaluated as part of this evaluation. The applicant also provided information that suggested that 300 square foot was the minimum size for a pool. Per the 3 contractors that they spoke to, staff coordinated with the building services department and confirmed that there are no building codes that sets minimum size standards for pools. So it is at the pool contractors and the property owner's discretion as far as the size of the pool. There's nothing in the code that requires it to be a minimum of 300 square feet. The applicant also provided visual comparisons that shows that they're hoping to support that their rear backyard is smaller in size than the other lots in the area. And then they had expressed to staff that with the understanding from the builder that they had a deeper lot or as deep a lot as the model home, they paid a higher premium for that lot, thinking or anticipating that they were getting a lot of a similar size to the model home, which is not correct. So with that, staff recommends approval of the deviation order with 3 conditions. The approval would grant a 3.5-foot deviation to the minimum 7-foot setback, representing a 50% deviation. And the 3 conditions are that they relocate one of the existing large trees that would be removed as part of the pool construction to the front of the yard, and also retain the existing magnolia tree for a total of 2 trees on the property. They will plant landscaping composed of hedging and small trees along their northeasterly side to shield the view of the pool enclosure from the public view along Peony Drive, and that they would obtain the appropriate tree removal permit prior to doing any of the tree removals. And with that, I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff?
I have a question. I think. The survey, it calls out for proposed elevations as if it were a plot plan. It's not an as-built survey.
They,
Right.
well, it's a plot plan and they've already built the home, so there was a plot plan based on the final, on the survey as in the plat. And then there is a final survey after the home is finished. And both of those show the shorter lot dimensions, the accurate lot dimensions.
Right, well, I'm concerned with elevations. So at the finished floor at 4661, I would guess the pool slab comes out the back door and is, near the finished floor elevation. Is there a wall proposed, a retaining wall proposed with this pool?
18-inch turn down, yes, sir.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, can you come up to the podium so the microphone picks up? Thank
So the
you.
back grade won't be affected? It's not going to?
No, sir.
Change the slope of the?
No, sir.
That's all I really wanted to ask.
Okay. Should I stay up
Thank you.
here? Okay.
You can sit down. Are there other questions of staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Wright?
Going back to actually following up on what Curtis said, based on the pictures that I can see, obviously I haven't seen the site, but the pictures that the applicant provided, there is a drainage tract behind their property. It appears there's a swale back there.
Yes.
When something like that gets constructed, especially when we're now increasing or shortening the distance between there, during the inspection and the construction process, how do we ensure that that swale is not going to be adversely affected through any grading or over excavation, overfill, or anything like that?
It could be put into their pool permit as conditions. The applicants have been informed during the site plan, the compliance review, that they had to maintain the drainage direction so that runoff continues to go in the direction that it was originally permitted for when the house was built.
Understood. For the lot drainage, yes.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the swale, which they don't really have any developable, they're not supposed to be back beyond, but, when this thing becomes excavated, since we're allowing them to go 3.5 feet from the rear property line, there's going to be construction vehicles. I'm just asking how would we normally protect the swale back there beyond the rear property line, not outside of their physical boundaries?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, but I could ask the building official to see if he can get some guidance. I'm not that versed on how a pool is constructed. I don't know.
I'm sorry. Oh, back to the microphone, please.
I'll get it if you don't mind. If he has his pool contract here, I'd like to ask them how they would protect that swale. That's my question.
Is that okay? All right.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Can you come up to the podium, please? State your name and address for the record.
My name is Adam Koyman. I live here in Oviedo at 784 South Lake Claire Circle in Oviedo, 32765 in Kingsbridge West.
So again, the question I have is we would normally have a 7-foot setback, which would probably give you plenty of room to operate. There is a drainage swale that's very evident behind this property. If we're going within 3 feet of the property, how will you protect the drainage swale to make sure it doesn't adversely affect it? Either through, because again, it rains, runoff, sedimentation, that kind of stuff. You put up any protective measures, silt fence, to keep anything debris going in there and basically creating a different slope in the ditch. That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Totally understand that. Very sensitive to drainage, very sensitive to staying on the property as much as possible. We'll have 3.5 feet now to work with in the back. We'll use a 4-foot wide bobcat to do any kind of grade work back there. So we'd be a 1/2 foot in. Obviously, during construction, there's going to be a little bit over
Sure,
that because it's impossible.
That's what I'm trying to make sure the deck is restored properly.
That's right. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put a silt fence up. That's easily done. Definitely think that's a great idea because in case it rains during the process, when the ground doesn't have any cover on it, there could be a possibility of runoff. We have really great pictures of the project of how the swale is sloped at this point right now, and we will, as part of the permitting process, and I can put on the construction print, that the swale will maintain its original slope upon completion of the project, and it will make sure that we go ahead and coordinate with the homeowner to make sure that the sod is delivered in a very proactive fashion to be sure it's there after the grade work is done, to help mitigate any rain that might happen in the meantime, to get the ground covered properly installed before any runoff or erosion can occur.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
That's my question.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I'd like to just add
Mr.
to
Gashland?
that, with the resodding of the slope, it's going to have to be reestablished too. Someone's going to have to be responsible to be on it until it's reestablished. Thank you.
I'll handle that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Wright?
make a motion to approve the deviation request for 2627 Peony, I can't even pronounce that word,
Peony?
Peony Drive, with the conditions as stated in the agreement.
Before you second, can I ask, is the conditions as cited by staff?
Conditions assigned by staff, yes.
And also the silt fence and the, are you adding those as well? that
You
came
know,
up?
I don't feel like I should dictate contractors' methods and means, so let.
So just the ones cited by
They're
staff?
aware of our concerns, and I believe they've answered that they'll take care of it. So
Okay.
I'm comfortable. So
Okay.
if someone else wants to add those, I wouldn't have an, opposition.
Thank you for the clarification. Now, Mr. Lopez, did you want to second? Thank you. Is there any discussion? I'll just say this, in looking at this, it seems like you may have gotten some bad information, but it does appear that there were several places along the way where you could have seen the correct size of the lot. I just encourage you to pay real close attention from now on.
I'm pretty embarrassed to be here before you guys.
If there's no other comments, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, we don't have any public hearing items tonight. And our discussion item is Mr. Groot.
I'm not going to do it in your packet because the last meeting that I sent some discouragement and whatever about your role, so I thought let's go over your role again. And also I wanted to hand out something I referenced at the last meeting. Who knows who Michael Berto is?
I do.
One. Anybody
I heard
else?
that.
Michael Berto? Who's driven on Michael Berto?
I drive on his road, but if I had to pass the test who his was, I'd probably fail.
Michael Berto, this is probably one of the most unusual cities in the world because you have a street named after a planner. Okay? And Mike, you see Wade Trim here? Wade Trim was the planning firm that was engaged by the city to work on its land development code, together with Charlie Seaman of Seaman and Larson. And those of you who may not know, Charlie Seaman is probably one of the top 5 land use lawyers in the nation. Okay? And this little ditty that was prepared in 2003 is indicative of, I think, part of what y'all were sort of struggling with the other day. Because this little cartoon book, which was prepared by Wade Trim, and as I recall, Wade Trim, it's like $400,000 worth of city money going into the land development code. It was a tremendous amount of money. The goal was to get, if you go to the, you read the cartoon when you get a chance, obviously, but the goal was to get to the, look at the last page, the last little cartoon square. That was the goal. That was the goal. To have a developer happy at the end of the day. And I'm just handing you that so because I think this sort of got lost in the shuffle throughout the years. And the fact that and I'm not critiquing anybody, you just happen to know who Michael Berto was because you
Yes.
probably had some presentations and some kiosks.
I
as
was
the
on
fir-
the master plan for the
You were on
downtown.
it? Okay. But that was the plan. Okay. Now let's talk about what you are. And it's a big deal. What I'm handing out is the state statute that deals with a local planning agency. And under that is the section of the city code, which deals with what you are. Again. And I don't know how many of y'all are going to continue to serve on this board. I hope all of you. But this is valuable to both you and your successor, because I hope that if you are leaving, and I hope, like I said, I hope you're not, that you can pass this information on to your successor. The local planning agency is a big deal. Okay. In the first subsection, it says the local governing body, which is the city council, city commission, county council, whatever it's called in your local government, it can be it. The local governing body can say, we don't need these guys. We're going to do it. Now, most don't, and that's probably pretty doggone smart, but the point is that the fact that they could do it indicates that it's a big deal, okay? And if you go to the second page of the statute at the very top, subsection 4, the agency, you're the agency responsible for the preparation of the comprehensive plan or plan amendment, and then you make recommendations to the adoption, about the adoption. Subsection B, monitor, and this is what you all were struggling with the other night, I think, monitoring and overseeing the effectiveness and status of the comprehensive plan. Wasn't that what you all were struggling about?
You're right.
Okay. But that's your role. So the fact that you were doing that was good. Okay? And what if you say, well, I don't like this? C, review proposed land development regulations, land development codes and amendments thereto, and make recommendations to the governing body, blah, perform other functions. But then you go to the code, which is the third and fourth pages that I'm handing you. Powers and duties, pretty much parodying the statute. Be responsible for preparation, make recommendations, monitor and oversee, review, blah, blah. But then go to the last page. The LPA may, A, initiate amendments to the comprehensive plan. Initiate amendments to the land development code. And request the city council to initiate investigation, et cetera. That's big deal stuff. And sometimes I think it's overlooked that that's what you are. But that's what you are, okay? And actually, these are 3 pages out of this book, and I sort of am disgusted because it was published by the University of Florida, but still it's a good book. The Florida Planning Officials Handbook, okay? And there's 3 pages in here that I'm, or 2 pages that I'm handing you. I think I missed the last. I'll get you that. And I'll give anybody the link. I probably have given you the link to this book. And anybody who wants one printed copy, I'll gladly give it to you. But the point is that I gave my. This talks about planning officials, et cetera, et cetera. But then, on this very first page I handed you, second paragraph, planning commissioners. That's what you are. Then it talks about the zoning board. Well, that's what you are too. Then it talks about the board of adjustment. Well, That's what you are too. So in Oviedo, unlike some jurisdictions, where they have a planning and zoning commission or a planning board, and then they have another board for zoning issues or site, technical decisions, and then another board usually just for variances, which we now call deviations in Oviedo. But you all are all three. And my point there is just that's the point, is that you are all three. You're not only the local planning agency, but you serve these other functions too. Okay? And those are big deals. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with, and this was in your packet, sometimes it's not an easy job. And sometimes it's not the most pleasing thing to be on, board to be on. And this is an editorial cartoon from a newspaper around Petaluma, California. And that's the way the LPA was, or Planning Commission, as they called it, was depicted. So, in conclusion, I started out with this cartoon that the city paid hundreds of thousands of dollars that was part of a very serious planning consultant work. Okay? That said the goal is to get to yes. Okay? And then there's another cartoon which shows the Planning and Development Planning Commission in Petaluma, California being, like the Spanish Inquisition. Okay? My guess is where you guys would like to be is somewhere in the middle, right? Where you're strict about standards, but you see the need for good development. Okay, now how do you get there? By going to your statutes again, going to your code, saying, what do we do? Oh, we do these things, and we can recommend them. We can initiate amendments to the conference. We can initiate amendments to the land development code. We can request city council to do studies. So my goal here was to give you some sense of empowerment, because I sensed this frustration at the last meeting. Maybe I was oversensitive, but I have 7 daughters, so you have to give me a break in that regard. So, but that, you really do have some important roles. And that's all I've got unless you have questions tonight.
I think you picked up very well on our frustration last time. And being reminded of what this board can do as far as initiating things, I think it's a good idea for us to go ahead and look at the transportation issues that we were talking about before and seeing if there is something that we can initiate, some amendments that we can initiate to alleviate some of the issues that we all.
And y'all did really good asking the poor guy questions who was here last, but and he, in a different context, in a different role, he probably could have given you answers, but really what he had in his head was statistics. And so if you want to do that, Madam Chair, you're right, but you need to say, we need a transportation planner and the public works people who will come in here and solve problems, not give us numbers. I mean, the numbers are helpful as you move towards solving the problems, but the numbers in and of themselves are just numbers, right?
And interesting, I did find out a few nights back that apparently the police department has been doing counts, traffic counts. Did you know that? And I said, they're not using your numbers then. And he says they have shared them with the department. I said, no one's using them.
Well, if nothing else, it's good to compare, isn't it?
Well, exactly. So my questioning on the validity of the numbers was on target, and I guess now we have more ammunition to force that issue, based on this information we have now.
Well, my goal was just to let you know what you are.
Sure.
And you can use it as you will, obviously. So, okay? Hope that helps tonight, and we'll do a little 5-minute thing every night. Okay?
Thank you,
Thank you,
Lonnie.
Lonnie.
Question for you. So, I'm going, and then this is the example I'll use, you know, let's look at there's two different scenarios here. Tonight, we, as a board, looked at a thing that would normally, as a Board of Adjustment, would never have been approved.
Absolutely, you're right.
Because there is no mitigating circumstances that have any validity in us giving any deviation request approval. So, in this case, call it a sympathetic ear, call it, you know, and that's kind of what I looked for, was they showed me something that they were provided out of their control, has nothing to do with the city, has nothing to do with the jurisdictional, the plat or anything like that. And I use that as my basis, okay, I found a path that I can use. But again, if I go by the letter of the comprehensive plan, our land development code, I shouldn't have approved it.
There's only two things that local government attorneys will agree upon. One is that they're underpaid, everybody, and the other is that 90 to 95% of variances that are granted in the United States shouldn't be, if you just applied the code. 95, I mean, look, I'm not exaggerating either. At least 9 out of 10, probably more, should not have been granted because of the typical eight criteria which the applicant must prove, and you can't prove them all by and large. You know, like, I mean, God bless these folks. Was it self-imposed? Well, you knew what the lot was, the size what the lot was.
Yeah.
You know, it never changed from the time you closed on the transaction. It never changed. Did you all do the right thing? You did. You know, but
At the end of the day, I feel like we made
Of course.
I feel like I made the right decision. From a staff perspective, you know, again, I'm wondering what criteria did they use to actually make the recommendation? Because I don't know that there's anything in their criteria that says they should recommend approval. You know, to me, they should have said recommend denial and then give us the option of, you know, at this point that there was no deviation. But I guess where I'm going back to is that, and I will tell you where my frustration, it wasn't from the transportation side, it really came from several weeks ago when we had when we do get to see those specific large-scale plans, development orders that require a special exception or something that is outside of the land development code. And the way I've always looked at those, and this is where I'm asking, I want to be corrected on this if I am, is that those are the moments when the city has the opportunity to negotiate a give and take on certain things that the developer wants. He wants to go to a smaller parking space because he needs to be able to meet his parking criteria because he's increased building footage. And one of the things that I came away that, like I said, my frustration came is that I didn't understand why we can allow, you know, a deviation when it really shouldn't be allowed, whereas I can't put any other criteria onto a developer that what I think is in the best interest of the comprehensive plan, because we have a traffic issue, that we force them to make sure that there's a developable connection versus allowing them just to build out 100% and then at the end of the day decide whether they're ever going to build it or not. And that's kind of where my frustration
I got you.
is. How can I make that decision? Because from what you told me is that you told me, no, you can't do that. And that's what I took away.
no,
from
you feel free to disagree with me. But I think it's appropriate always when a developer's before you asking for deviations or the like, to say, how are you mitigating these? What are your mitigating strategies? And if I'm the developer and I go, well, you know, you're not going to get it unless you give me the deviations. Is that a mitigating strategy? It is? I'm not going to develop unless you do it. Is that a mitigating strategy?
no.
Yeah, and it's not.
It
So
is not.
I should be able to articulate something to you, whether it's I'm trying to think of a word besides BS, but whether if it's that or if it's truly, well, I'm moving, you know, I'm going to put 10 trees, or I'm going to contribute to the tree bank, or I'm going to, there's a 0.5 acre tract, I'm putting in a park and a memorial down there, or something like that. If I can't give you an answer, then you're free to negotiate more and say, well, I may want you to develop Groot, but I think you need to mitigate the impacts, and here's what I think would be appropriate for you to mitigate the impacts. It takes some creativity on your part now, but, you know, that's a fair question to me. If I'm asking for deviations and I can't say the standard's there for a reason. So if I'm asking to deviate from the standard, I have to give you a good reason, and I have to show you what the public benefit is, the mitigation that warrants me getting that deviation. That make sense?
Well, no, it does. And again, as I mentioned, I think last week, is that for me personally, you know, it means that I have to be a little bit more diligent on my side to make sure that I just can't, it can't come across, you know, I don't like it, you know?
That's right.
I don't like your organization. I don't like, you know, it has to have some meat and justification based on our comprehensive plan or our land development code. That's
Just good planning strategies,
yeah.
right? You know.
So I have to be more diligent in how I approach my opinion, in a sense, once I hear the, you know, the people speak. Obviously can't make predetermined, just, you know,
Right.
any type of predetermination. So in a case where, like I said, where in this case, and again, I'm going back to the same example, is that, and hence why I asked for transportation, is that I know that we have level of service E plus 30%. It fits. I know that development will have, any development along the Mitchell-Hammock corridor is already going to be grandfathered in for the most part, or have embedded trips in it, that any transportation engineer is going to make work, you know? And then our transportation representative is basically going to say, yes, it meets the criteria. When we know that it doesn't function.
No, I understand.
And there's the problem. is that I
Understand.
have no ammunition.
Watch this real quick. I hope, usually a lawyer wants to know how the question's going to be answered before they ask it. When you worked for DCA, if I came in and I said, as a jurisdiction, we're going to have level of service E on this road, would you say that's failing?
It's very, very close to failing.
Well, that's failing. But that poor guy up here, you couldn't get him, and and truthfully, honestly, in his profession, he couldn't tell you it was failing. Any road was failing. His criteria, because the criteria for failing is not level of service E anymore, like it used to be when we were fighting with DCA. It's the only, if the cars aren't moving, if it's a parking lot, it's failing, right? Other than that, it's functioning. Do you agree?
Well, if this level of service is E and it's operating below E, then it's technically failing. If the level of service is standard is E and it's operating within E, but there is obvious congestion where you're sitting at the light for 2-3 cycles, it's a perception of failing, but
See, it's
legally,
perception.
it's
I'm not making, it's a
not
perception of failing. You can't get any.
It's failing.
The only way that you can say, a traffic engineer will say a road's failing is if it's not moving the cars at all. It's a parking lot. Basically, not technically, but basically these days, right?
If the standard is D and they're operating at C and there's congestion, it's not failing. If the standard is D and they're operating at D plus, then it's failing.
And if
because
you're
it's not
operating,
meeting the
if you
standard.
have E plus 30% and you're within E plus 30%, you're not failing, you're miserable, but it's not failing. And that was the rub I got the other day. Yeah.
I still came away not knowing how, if it's E and plus 30%, but we're adding some new development that's going to add, 15 cars,
Whatever
trips
X is.
per day. How is it, what can we use to say, no, you can't put in your development because the road can't handle it?
And that's where we need to look at the comp plan again and get public works in here. Do you agree?
Well, I don't know if you responded to my email, Lonnie, about the House Bill
2011.
Yeah, House Bill 7207. I think that I sent Lonnie an email expressing that the statutes allow local governments to kind of put the brakes on increasing entitlements through a comp plan, but
Comp plan.
you can't really put the brakes on rezonings, building permits, development orders, development agreements, or permits if, one, the facility is already backlogged, two, the applicant is willing to meet their concurrency requirements by some type of fair share payment.
That's where you're talking about condition. That's a condition, though. A
Yes.
fair share payment is a condition.
Yep, it is a condition. I
But-
definitely don't think that a deviation or a mitigation is that we'll build somewhere else. My response will be, well, please go build somewhere else, but that's from 7 years of regulating at the state level.
But I really, you really need Public Works in here talking to you, and
Right.
unless Bobby's, he would probably bring a consultant in, because Bobby's not he's not a planner. Bobby's a linear kind of guy, and he's a great engineer, but he's linear, and he's not a planner. You agree?
Right.
Okay.
So you know what our frustration is, I think, at this point. Who do you suggest that we ask to come to our meeting to help us figure this
Well,
out?
if the focus is on transportation, Public Works,
Okay.
and they would be encouraged to bring a transportation planner with them, right?
A traffic engineer.
Traffic engineer, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Does that
It will
help?
be a hot seat for them, without a doubt, but.
Well, hopefully we want to tag like we did the poor guy that was here before.
I apologize to him. He was just there because he was there.
Yeah, he just happened to be in the hot
He
seat, for
was.
sure.
I wasn't picking on him, but he was there.
I understand. Okay, thank you, Lonnie, for all of that. Our future meeting dates are November 6th. We have a regular meeting, November 20th, we are off. December 4th, a regular meeting, December 18th, we're off, and no meeting on January 1st. The next one in the first of the year will be January 15th. And I'll remind everyone again, all of us are up except for, I think, Kurt Gashlin and Kristen. Our terms are up, so if you want to be reappointed, you need to submit the letter to the city clerk before the November meeting, I think, or by the November meeting to meet their deadlines. If there's,
Keeping 7?
I'm sorry?
Are they keeping 7?
I don't know. This is their opportunity to cut it back to 5 if that's what they choose
Well,
to
I'm just kind
do.
of figuring it's like Big Brother or Survivor. I need to throw a couple of years in the bus, just to make sure.
See who gets voted off the island? Really? Okay, if there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So made.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We stand adjourned.